what do you make of the charges by the Israelis the Israeli basketball team, that the Irish basketball team is racist? I mean, they are on the horns of a dilemma. They face, exile from international competition if they don't fulfil this fixture and one in November. And then on foot of the Israeli team being pictured with a member of the IDF with machine guns and so on, they responded and they've been branded as anti-Semitic.
Yeah, well, look, I disagree with that profoundly. People who disagree with the policies and actions of the Israeli government aren't anti-Semitic per se.
Because you do disagree currently with the invasion of Gaza in its proportion.
That's correct. I don't disagree with Israel's right to defend itself and pursue the terrorist organization Hamas that attacked them on October 7th. I do think what's happening in Gaza is collective punishment, is excessive, and I disagree profoundly with the actions of the current Israeli government and the current Israeli Prime Minister. But there is a strategy which is employed by extreme Zionists to say that anyone who's critical of Israel is anti-Semitic, and they actually admit that themselves, that this is their view, that being anti-Israel or anti-Israeli policy equals anti-Semitism. I think that's profoundly wrong, and I think it actually devalues anti-Semitism. And I fear that it may even start to make anti-Semitism acceptable, which would be a terrible thing, because anti-Semitism.
So what should the women do? Should they play the game?
Look, ultimately, that is their decision. But I have a very clear view on the general issue of boycotts, whether it's sport, whether it's music, whatever it is. I don't think we should disadvantage ourselves. It's one thing to expel Russia or expel Israel from certain sporting events or certain music events or contests, and I think that may well be appropriate. But for us to remove ourselves actually isn't a good idea in my view, because all we do is disadvantage ourselves. This is why I never agree with unilateral actions. When you act on your own in these kind of circumstances, you're the people who lose out. For a boycott to be successful,
I mean, South Africa has done that in taking Israel to the International Court of Justice. They have set themselves up to be probably penalised in terms of trade by Israel in years to come.
Well, we'll have to see how that case plays out. I'm horrified by the potential war crimes that are happening in Gaza, but every war crime isn't genocide, and genocide is a very particular thing. And one thing that I'd be concerned for, on behalf of South Africa, by the way, is that in 2 or 3 or 4 years' time, when the World Court rules, they may rule against Israel, but they may find it wasn't genocide. And then South Africa, in 3 or 4 years' time, finds itself in the place of being the country that falsely accused Israel of genocide, according to the World Court. So that's why you have to think through these things. It's not the same as liking something on Twitter or reposting something.
Your thinking would explain why you will go to the White House for the St. Patrick's Day period. You will go to Washington. And people are calling on you to be very outspoken, not privately with Joe Biden, but publicly, when you have a platform.
Look, first of all, I haven't yet been invited to the White House, so I don't assume the invitation will come. But if I am invited, I will go. And of course, I'll use that opportunity, both in public and private, to put across the views of the Irish people to the US president. The US has a huge influence over Israel. It may well be the only country in the world they still listen to, or listen to it in a meaningful sense. But I do need to, I think it is worth pointing out that, in fairness to the US, Qatar, Egypt, they have been working on a ceasefire plan. And that's a ceasefire that we've been calling for a very long time. And I hope by the time St. Patrick's Day comes that we'll be talking about, but we'll be in a situation where we have a ceasefire, a humanitarian ceasefire that allows for the hostages to be released, ends the killing, allows for aid to get into Gaza. And I hope what we're talking about on March 17th is how we make this ceasefire permanent and how we move towards a lasting solution.
You probably saw the response of Hamas, their counter proposals, which the Israelis immediately dismissed. And when I saw them first, I thought, these are totally daft. This is delusional stuff on the part of Hamas. What did you think?
Well, I don't think there can be a permanent peace if Hamas remains in charge of the Gaza Strip. I think that is clear. What I really regret is that after the bestial attacks that occurred on October 7th, that Israel didn't follow a different course. They had an opportunity to say, We now insist that the world support us in removing Hamas from Gaza, or at least removing Hamas control of Gaza, the leadership, the senior people, restoring Palestinian Authority control of Gaza. And instead of going down that route, they went straight for violence. And I'm not sure they'll actually be able to remove Hamas control of the Gaza Strip by violence. 4 months, 30,000 people dead, unbelievable amount of damage done. And Hamas fighters are still there. The Hamas leadership are still in control of large parts of Gaza. It does show that violence isn't the solution to this conflict. We've had 75 years of violence, terrorism, occupation, oppression, dispossession, Jews and Arabs all suffering. The only solution to this is a diplomatic one and a political one. And that's where we really need America to show the kind of leadership that it showed when it helped to negotiate the Camp David Accords, peace with Egypt, peace with Jordan.
Indeed, and the Good Friday Agreement.
Indeed, yeah.
And they were part of that.